Both of these vehicles have outstanding reputations when it comes to off-road ability. Right, what we're going to do now is test the vehicles up an extreme climb. My good friend John Rich, who has had extensive off-road experience, more than I have, and Julian Sneyman, who's had a lot less than I have, but nevertheless has had experience off-road. This hill climb is very lumpy, very steep, which means we're going to demand from the vehicles traction, which is going to be aided by wheel travel, which is more on the Land Rover than it is on the Land Cruiser, traction control with the Land Rover, and differential locks on the axles of the Land Cruiser. John will first take the Land Cruiser up as slow as possible, deliberately dropping each wheel into holes to make it as difficult as possible. The idea here is to have the vehicle work as hard as possible up the climb to test its abilities. This is done in four-wheel drive, low-range first gear with open axle differentials. The Land Cruiser is equipped with axle differential locks. The rear lock is now engaged. This means that the two rear wheels are locked together. This can be seen here quite clearly. Now the front locker is engaged. Now all four wheels will rotate at exactly the same speed, no matter what. John now takes the Defender up the same slope at the same speed, following the same line. The Defender's center transmission is locked. Clearly, the Defender is far superior to the Land Cruiser, and the Land Cruiser must use its diff locks to keep up.
Julian, we went up the hill. First, we didn't have any diff locks on, and I took it extremely slowly. Okay, we were making the vehicle work. Obviously, the weight is a negative for it. We could have picked up revs and sort of run it a little bit, but try the same. Put it on the same at the lowest RPM.
Yes.
Go up. But if she stalls or can't make progress forward, stall it on the forward progress. Okay, just hit the brake, select reverse, and then take your foot off everything and do a reverse heel start.
Okay.
That's your safest procedure on the way back down. Let's go for it.
Great.
Again, with open axle differential, the Cruiser battles, even at a higher speed.
We want to get something that's going to make it challenging, but they both must travel in the same footprints of each other, so it looks the same, and it must be as close as we possibly can get the wheels to travel in.
The Defender, meanwhile, demonstrates its traction control to great effect. I'm determined to get the Defender to stop by placing each wheel in the deepest holes I can find. I am impressed. The traction control works very well indeed. Now I'm going to test the compression of the engine, going downhill, feet off, low range first gear. This vehicle has a engine control system, in other words a stall prevention system in the electronic engine management system, which I have heard, and I'm going to test now, is a bit of a problem when going down really steep slopes, because even on compression it goes down too fast and therefore tends to lurch forward. And let's see if that is the case. That's quite horrible, actually. That's quite horrible. The Land Cruiser's 4.2 engine is a beauty. It's probably the best motor for that kind of driving, because it has such high compression, and the Land Cruiser behaves a lot better on the downhills. And it's a bit disappointing, actually. But I have read that in other reports about this vehicle. Few will disagree that front and rear axle lockers as fitted to the Toyota is the ultimate traction solution. But lockers do have drawbacks, such as seriously limiting steering control once the lockers are engaged. Here is an off-road obstacle that should show up any clearance shortcomings. No two standard four-wheel drives have clearances to match these two. It should also highlight turning circle issues if there are any. Standing on the riverbank watching these two vehicles perform, the Land Rover did better. Why? Well, to begin with, the rear axle locked on the Toyota had the effect of broadening its turning radius. Clearance of the Land Rover is also a little better. Not by a lot, but it is better. And in this kind of terrain, one of Toyota's weaknesses showed itself. The rear axle is hung by leaf springs, and this means that the axle mounts lie under the axle. In rocky or muddy terrain, these can get caught on obstacles and be a hindrance. My conclusion is that if it wasn't for the front diff lock on the Land Cruiser, the off-road performance of the Defender is better. Not by a long way, but better. Add the front locker, and the two become so equally matched, it's really too close to call. Both of these vehicles will find themselves spending hours, if not days and weeks, on tracks like this, rutted tracks through the bushveld. Which one has the better ride? Well, I don't think you can actually say one is better than the other, but they are quite different. The Land Rover's ride is softer. It actually absorbs the bumps quite a bit better than the Land Cruiser's. The Land Cruiser's is a hard ride. You feel the bumps, you feel the vibrations more than you do with the Defender. But when the track is very undulating and the body is doing this, the Land Rover throws you around, throws occupants around far more than does the Land Cruiser. So really, it's take your pick. On the tarmac, however, the two vehicles are not close at all. Pulling power up the hills is no great shakes with either of these two, and if a one-on-one drag race was to be contested, I reckon the Defender would win a half-mile by a nose. Both are very content at 115 km/h cruise, but for comfort and seating, interior noise and driver relaxation, the Toyota is a clear winner. It's a far nicer drive on the open road, has more steering feel, which isn't that much, and even if you're like me, not a particularly large person, the Defender is a bit of a test of endurance on the open road, rolling in corners like a boat in a gale, and when the road gets even a little bit twisty, feels decidedly unsure-footed. While no limousine, the Cruiser is far more palatable on the tarmac. The Defender has 6 forward gears, the Toyota 5. While nice to have, 6 gears should not be regarded as a big advantage. Actually, 6 gears seems a little pointless for this vehicle. The reduction in noise levels is welcome, but if the terrain is even remotely hilly, it rarely gets a chance to drive in 6th anyway. Would I swap my Land Cruiser for a Defender? No, I wouldn't. And if I was standing with an open checkbook facing 2 dealerships, which one would I choose? I'd choose the Toyota.